India today operates as a massive, bustling global center, but human activity here traces back incredibly far in time, to a primal landscape between 400,000 and 200,000 BC. This topological map highlights the Indus River Valley, where the Harappan people emerged during the first few thousand years BC. The physical evidence of their urban planning is clear. The Harappans developed their own writing, an advanced economic system, and large-scale architecture, before mysteriously collapsing around 1500 BC, likely due to massive floods or foreign incursions. Following the Harappans, migrant tribes speaking an early form of Sanskrit moved in and spread across large portions of the land by 1000 BC. They brought with them 4 sacred texts known as the Vedas, the oldest recognized Hindu scripts. These Vedic Aryans built a society organized into 3 strict tiers: Brahmin or priest, Kshatriya or warrior, and Vaishya or commoner. Their philosophy dictated that happiness and salvation required adhering to one's specific place in life, guided strictly by strong morals and righteous actions. The physical infrastructure of the urban Harappans and the strict social and ethical codes of the Vedic Aryans did not fade with time. Instead, they merged to form the cultural bedrock of India. They established a civilization built on deep, surviving ideologies rather than fleeting settlements. This map shows how a series of 16 individual, fragmented states stretching across northern India were eventually dissolved. During the 4th century BC, a leader named Chandragupta Maurya expanded his authority across this vast area, consolidating these states into India's first major imperial power, the Mauryan Empire. 2 generations later, the 3rd Mauryan emperor, Ashoka, fought a massive and bloody war against the neighboring kingdom of Kalinga. The sheer trauma and devastation of that conflict led Ashoka to abandon military aggression. He turned instead to the teachings of a man born a few centuries prior, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Under Ashoka's rule, the empire adopted a strict stance of nonviolence. By refusing to participate in further armed conflicts, Ashoka accelerated the spread of Buddhism, turning a localized belief system into a dominant religion throughout the Indian subcontinent. Ashoka's shift from military expansion to pacifism changed the way authority was projected in the region. By prioritizing moral leadership over the sword, he expanded the reach of Buddhist thought further than any army could, creating a cultural legacy that would survive long after his political borders collapsed. That collapse occurred in the 2nd century BC, leading to a fragmented period. In the north, the Kushana kingdom thrived through Silk Road trade with Rome and China, while in the south, kingdoms like the Chola and Chera constantly fought for supremacy. Stability eventually returned to northern India through the Gupta Empire. During what is often considered the Classical Age, Gupta rulers maintained law and order and expanded their borders, largely through peaceful martial alliances, creating a prolonged period of intense cultural flourishing. As this map indicates, that stability cracked between the 5th and 6th centuries as invading Huns annexed Gupta lands. Soon after, Muslim sultans began pushing into the subcontinent from the northwest. By 1192, forces led by Muhammad Ghori defeated the resolute Rajput defenders, claiming territory and destroying Hindu temples in the process. What followed was the highly volatile era of the Delhi Sultanate. For 3 centuries, control over northern India violently cycled through 5 distinct ruling families: the Slave dynasty, the Khilji, the Tughlaq, the Sayyid, and finally the Lodi dynasty. The Lodi dynasty fell in 1526 when defeated at Panipat by Babur, a leader from Kabul who established the Mughal Empire. For over 2 centuries, this Turkic-Mongol power injected massive wealth and distinct architectural achievements into the region, evidenced by the immense symmetry and scale of the Taj Mahal. Century after century of invasions, shifting borders, and rising empires could easily erase a weaker culture. Here, the continuous cycle simply layered Islam over the entrenched roots of Hinduism and Buddhism, creating an incredibly complex, resilient civilization that absorbed foreign influence rather than being destroyed by it. By the early 18th century, widespread revolts shook the Mughal foundations. As their authority waned, The British East India Company, which had already established a foothold in the region, rapidly escalated its control to fill the massive power vacuum. In 1857, local Indian soldiers in Meerut initiated a revolt that quickly escalated into a widespread rebellion. The British managed to suppress this mutiny within months, and in response, Queen Victoria declared that India would now be ruled directly in the name of the British Crown. The push for self-rule accelerated following World War I. Mahatma Gandhi and the Indian National Congress initiated a sweeping strategy of complete non-cooperation, uniting massive crowds of locals in widespread defiance. When initial non-cooperation stalled, the strategy evolved. In December 1929, Gandhi launched the Civil Disobedience Movement. This included the bold declaration of an official Indian Independence Day on January 16th and a complete refusal to follow British mandates. The British responded with mass arrests and violence, but the resistance maintained strict organization. Even after failed negotiations during the Round Table Conferences of the 1930s and the subsequent Quit India movement, political leaders continued to structure their massive rebellion effectively. Then came World War II. The British forced Indian soldiers into the global conflict, outfitting them in British uniforms to fight foreign battles. However, when the war concluded, a new Labour Party took power in Britain, bringing fresh sympathy toward the Indian fight for autonomy. The decades of organized resistance finally broke the colonial grip. As the clock struck midnight on August 15, 1947, political leaders took to the microphones to announce the official transfer of power. India had become an independent, self-ruling nation. This midnight declaration finalized the end of an occupation. It proved the sheer endurance of the subcontinent. A civilization whose foundations were laid hundreds of thousands of years ago managed to absorb countless conquerors, outlast global empires, and ultimately reclaim the right to dictate its own future.